Hello, I'm Marianne Jett, and we're here at the CoinGeek Scaling Conference here in Toronto, Canada. And I'm here today with the CEO and founder of MoneyButton and Yours.org. Welcome, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Great. So last time I saw you in person, it was 1 year ago in Hong Kong at the CoinGeek conference in May. And so I remember you were just unveiling the MoneyButton. And now here we are. We're a year later, and you've got so much going on with MoneyButton, the API for Bitcoin. It's like a true interface for the Bitcoin blockchain. And so you've got so many projects going on. Can you tell us about some of the projects that you're working on?
Sure. Let me just briefly comment on what you just said, because it's interesting to think about how much has happened in the past year. We launched the prototype of MoneyButton, which was very primitive about 1 year ago. And we then took the prototype and we redesigned and re-implemented everything much better. And we launched that sort of shortly before the other conference 6 months ago. And since then, what we've seen is lots and lots of apps. We have something like maybe about 100, maybe 200 apps that are all using MoneyButton. It's been really interesting to see. I mean, we made MoneyButton because when we built Yours.org, it's a social network with integrated Bitcoin payments. And we realized that there are so many different applications of the button that we built to make Yours.org possible that we wanted to take the button out and make it its own thing. And it's been really interesting to see all of these projects emerge where what they've done is to make stuff we didn't think of, which is exactly what we were hoping was going to happen. And so that's been really cool. It's just interesting to think back and see how early it was a year ago and how much has happened since then. So what we're working on right now is we just at this conference we announced Paymail. Paymail is basically email that supports Bitcoin. And what that means is if you think about how to solve problems related to things like digital rights management and any issue related to people interacting with other people and basically coming to an agreement and signing stuff, and then involving the distribution of money in some way. You need some kind of identity system. You need a way that you have a name, I have a name, and I can say, I create, say, a contract. You and I have a contract together. I can sign it, and then I can add Marianne's name, and then you get a message, and then you can sign it by swiping MoneyButton if you agree to whatever the contract is. And you sort of draw the implications of this. You really have to have the identity system first. You got to have some kind of decentralized protocol for identity. And what Paymail is just we realize that email addresses have the wonderful property that they're human readable, and people are already familiar with them and already using them for identity because people use things like Gmail as an identity system already today. That's just the reality of how these things work. And it also has all the technical properties we needed to be able to build an identity system around it. So what Paymail really is it's a giant extension to email at a technical level. At a user level, though, it's very simple. All it really is at a user level is we're making it possible, although we don't quite have this yet, we're making it possible that your existing email application can add support for Bitcoin. So that you just basically have a green checkbox, and all of a sudden what you can do is you can now do things like have and send money, and you can send money to someone, to their name, to who you know. You can have contracts with other people, and you can do things like create a project that earns money that distributes things automatically according to the terms of the contract. It enables all of those things. So what Paymail is it's a user-friendly way for people to have an identity on Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Now, does that also incorporate a handle? Like, for example, the Handcash handle?
Good question. So your Paymail is your handle, and what Handcash is doing, and I hope I'm not breaking their, I believe it's completely public. They're adding support for this. I mean, your existing Handcash handle also is a Paymail. It's just your Handcash handle at handcash.io. Mm-hmm. So it is completely compatible with that. And that's not an accident. I mean, Handcash helped create all this stuff. It was actually a collaborative undertaking with ourselves, InChain, Handcash, Centbee, and Electrum SV, actually all worked together to actually figure out the best way to do this. So we made a protocol that was basically agreeable to everyone. And we think that not only is it agreeable to us, we're pretty sure that when we bring this to real businesses that it just solves the problem. They're already using email as the identity system. We can allow them to do things like real legal contracts and automatic smart contracts and all that type of thing with this system.
And can there be other businesses or wallets that can integrate just like MoneyButton's doing into the paywall, like MoneyButton, Handcash, and Electrum?
Yes. So the idea is that, first of all, you can have this address at a domain. So end users are almost certainly going to be signing up for somebody that's going to be providing this as a service. So if you go to moneybutton.com, you can buy a Paymail for $1. They're not free. You do have to pay $1. We do let people, if you can prove that you own a name on another service already, you can bring that in for free if no one has taken it. But otherwise, it costs $1, and there's actually a built-in market that allows you to resell them. It's a long story. But in any case, the idea is that once you have one, say you buy Marianne at moneybutton.com for $1. What you can now do is, and then say at the same time you already have, I don't know what your Handcash handle is, but
Yes, my Handcash handle is the $ Marianne Jett.
Okay. So what you can do is you'll be able to send from MoneyButton to Handcash. And what you do is if you want to send from your MoneyButton wallet to your Handcash wallet, you just type into MoneyButton, Marianne at Handcash, Marianne Jett at handcash.io. So you don't type in the $ just because we're doing it in a way that works for everyone, right? So then these other wallets like SentB, Electrum SV, and RelayX, and we're bringing this to exchanges and stuff like that as well. So it'll be a lot of different services that actually all use the same protocol. So you can send to yourself from wallet to wallet. You just, like with MoneyButton, it's just swipe, send it to yourself, or to other people, anybody where you have their Paymail. And because it's an email address, we're actually building in support for email. So you can do things like if someone doesn't already have a Paymail, it's just a normal email address, then actually it basically sends them an invite to join MoneyButton and get their wallet and get their money. So it's just a way to send money over an email address, which actually is somewhat similar to the early days of PayPal. Because if you go back to the very beginning, the sort of first popular payment system on the internet, PayPal, was all about sending money from email to email. Well, this is like that, but way, way better. Because you can do things like sign legally enforceable contracts and do things like put data on chain and have payments that are distributed automatically and all that stuff. Automatically enforce smart contracts that are also legally enforceable. So we're really genuinely solving the identity problem. But in a nutshell, for the end user, all that matters is type in their email, send it to them. The email is a Paymail.
And so, for example, if I wanted to send money from MoneyButton to Handcash, or no, how about MoneyButton to RelayX? That's like an option. Yes. So in that case, what would the scenario be? And how many handles or identities would I need? Because I guess I would need, well, you tell me.
Well, I mean, the idea is that basically you really ultimately only need one. I mean, only advanced people who have multiple wallets are going to have more than one of these. I mean, the idea is that just like you have a primary email address, you're going to have a primary Paymail. Now, if for some reason you want more than one, you can certainly do that. So if you want different wallets, you might even want more than one MoneyButton account for whatever reason. You can do stuff like that if you want to, but I think most people will just have one of them. And what they're going to do is they're basically going to pick a service like MoneyButton, and they're just going to use that as their wallet, and their Paymail is whichever name that they prefer.
Okay. Now, since I have a Handcash wallet and I have the Marianne Jett, I could use that as the identity.
Yes.
And so, but if I wanted to send money from MoneyButton to RelayX, I could still use the Marianne Jett Handcash identity?
No, you would want to, RelayX will add support for this, and you will then have a name at RelayX. So it'll be, I don't know what this, but it's, Marianne such and such at RelayX dot whatever it is. So, you'll have each different wallet you have is really going to need a different one because they're giving you different addresses and different Bitcoin addresses and things like that. So basically there's going to be, if you have many different wallets, you're going to have many different Paymails.
Oh, okay. But the idea is to really have one wallet, basically, I guess. Well, I mean, if you can.
Well, that is enabled. I mean, what we need to do is basically things like what you're describing would be something like, swiping MoneyButton with hand cash or something like that. I mean, that won't be happening soon. I think most people will basically, for most stuff, will have one, they'll have one preferred wallet, and they will use whatever that domain name is or Paymail. Now, with that being said, it is designed in such a way that you can do things like, we can make it so that if you have your own domain name and things like that, you can attach your Paymail to a particular host, so that you can do things like, if you like MoneyButton and you have your own domain name, Marianne Jett at something.com, you could then use Marianne Jett at something.com, and that could be your primary Paymail. And then if you don't like using MoneyButton anymore, then if every wallet supports this, you could say switch to hand cash and still have the same Paymail, but now it's being provided by hand cash instead of MoneyButton. So that's really the idea. I mean, you'll end up with one Paymail. This will take a little bit longer for us to build. I mean, this is one step at a time, but the protocol allows all of this. So you'll be able to do that. If you want your own domain name, that's your identity. So that's why you're going to have one of them, because you're just going to have one that's your primary one, and that's what you use for most things. I mean, you're going to end up with whichever one is the one that you use to actually sign real contracts in business is what you're using for this.
Like, for example, my domain is premiermedicalinc.com, and I have an email now that's, something like at premiermedicalinc.com. So I could still use, I could say, Marianne Jett 123 at premiermedicalinc.com, and that can be my Paymail identity, like the email or identity, basically.
Exactly. So that is your email. That already is, for business purposes, that's your primary identity. You're already using that as your primary identity, something at premiermedicalinc.com. Now, so then what we will enable is you can host that on MoneyButton.com. So you'll just be able to use that. And so people will send money there, and it'll show up in your MoneyButton wallet.
Okay. Because right now, I would say, I can't remember what company, let's just say it's GoDaddy is the host. No, I think I've got my domain that I bought and I pay. Maybe it's through GoDaddy, let's say. But then there's another company that hosts, because you can have someone that does the domain, a company, and then another company that hosts that domain and the email, of course. So, but you're saying that, so if I wanted to use Paymail for, let's say, Marianne Jett 123 at premiermedicalinc.com, because let's say that's my email address, I could say, but then my domain is with, let's say it's GoDaddy. So I could switch it and say, okay, take the domain off of GoDaddy and move it over to MoneyButton, or
not exactly. So you'll continue using GoDaddy as your sort of domain name host. You'll have your website host will also still be the same. Whoever you're using for email, probably Google, that's the most popular one, or whatever it is that you're using for email, that will also stay the same. You're just going to add support for Paymail. And what you'll do is you'll basically log into GoDaddy, and you're going to set a little value somewhere, and that will turn on Paymail inside MoneyButton. So it'll be another service. Like, we're providing Paymail so that you can use it just the same way you use these other hosts.
Well, that makes it really easy, because I won't have to make any changes at all. So I could just still keep my GoDaddy domain up through them. Don't have to change anything there. And I can also keep the hosting with the same company that I have my website. And then I can still keep my same email that I've been using for business all these years. And then just say, oh, add this one extra thing, which is, for example, add MoneyButton as the Paymail provider, I suppose, for that particular email that I've been using all these years, right?
So you won't have to tell anyone anything. I mean, you just keep your primary email at premiermedicalinc.com. You don't have to. When you just plug in MoneyButton, you don't tell anybody any new. All that means is anybody else that has a wallet that supports this can just send money to your email at premiermedicalinc.com. Okay. And furthermore, they can sign contracts and all that other stuff. So you'll just, the people that are sending money to you and things like that, you don't have to tell them anything different. It's just your existing email address. It's the same address. They already have it.
And so you can actually get an email. I mean, through Paymail? And if so, I mean, is it just still coming in? Because right now, for example, I use Outlook for getting my email in a lot of the time. So I don't know how that is incorporated. Can you still use it, or is it a whole nother system?
You'll still use Outlook for email because Paymail is designed to be complementary to email. So it doesn't really replace email. You can still use normal email. That's the same. Mm-hmm. What it is the same address, because that's your identity. I mean, that's your technology name, so to speak. Mm-hmm. It's the name that you use, that you give inside of a computer, basically, that's human readable, because it has the technical properties that we need. So that's your identity, is that name that you own. Mm-hmm. And that becomes something that you can send and receive money to and from, and that you can sign contracts with. So you just add in MoneyButton, just like you signed up to GoDaddy and you signed up to to the hosting provider, and you signed up to Microsoft for the email and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. You're just going to sign up to MoneyButton to add Paymail. But all you do is when somebody wants to send you money, they say, what's your Paymail? It's the same thing as your email. It's the same thing. You don't need to give them anything different. They don't need to learn a new name or something like that. You don't need to give them a new number. It's the same name. Mm-hmm.
And then if somebody wants to send me Bitcoin, which is ticker symbol BSV, of course, not the airdrops like BTC. So if anyone wanted to send me BSV, I could just say, here, this is my email I've had for years, and oh yeah, this is it, and they can send it. Yeah,
it's the same one. Yeah,
and then the money will come in to whatever designated wallet that I prefer. So if it's MoneyButton, then the money will just come straight into MoneyButton.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, well, that's exciting. The Paymail. It's that's like a new thing. I mean, every time I see these CoinGeek conferences, there's always something new, and that's really exciting. Now, I've heard you talk quite a bit about the onboarding problem, and you've kind of talked about ways that maybe we could solve it or help that out. What kind of things have you come up with?
Sorry. What's the question again?
About the onboarding problem.
Okay. So we basically needed Paymail first, because a lot of the solutions we have to onboarding, things like we want to be able to just send someone an email to onboard them. You should be able to just send money to someone's email. Well, we needed Paymail because we needed to make it such that you can use your email address for this stuff. So you'll get an email, and what it'll be is basically, because every existing email address doesn't already support Paymail, it's just going to say you need to sign up somewhere that supports Paymail, which is MoneyButton, because you're sending it from your MoneyButton wallet, because we're the first one to implement all this stuff. So what'll happen is you just send money to people's email addresses, but then they get nudged to sign up to MoneyButton. And what will end up happening is, because they will end up basically signing up for probably a new Paymail most of the time. We don't yet support the hosting stuff. That's something that we'll implement depending on priorities and demand and all that stuff. But probably what they'll do is they'll just sign up and get a different Paymail at MoneyButton.com. Just because that's going to be the easiest thing for them most of the time. So, but then they can have the money that you sent them. And that's it. So we're just making it, we're trying to make it as compatible with everything that already exists, that everyone's already doing, as we can. Mm-hmm.
So what other projects are you working on? Anything in the future?
Well, yes. I mean, basically everything else we're working on next really ultimately revolves around Paymail, because we needed the identity system to start doing other things. So some of the stuff we're doing next will be things like signing and encrypting data on chain. So we're going to make it so that you can just basically easily upload large files that are signed and encrypted to the blockchain. Mm-hmm. And so you can start doing things like publishing an article on the blockchain that people pay for and stuff. I mean, we're going to enable all of that type of thing. And you're signing things with your name, which is your Paymail. Mm-hmm. That's your identity. That's the thing. It's like if you were to write it down as a piece of paper, like a paper contract, your signature at the bottom is your Paymail. Mm-hmm. And only you can sign with your Paymail. Mm-hmm. So it's a cryptographic signature. And so you can sign things, you can encrypt things. I could send an encrypted message to you using Paymail, okay? And you can do things like follow people on the blockchain. If I want to publish content on the blockchain, my Paymail, you can see the stuff that I'm posting to the blockchain. So these are the types of things we're going to be implementing next. We're going to be using Paymail inside of MoneyButton to start making all of these ideas a reality.
And to do the encryption, is there any patents that you're going to have to use? And is it, so it looks like maybe yes, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, Inchain is patenting many applications on top of Bitcoin. I mean, this involves some of Inchain's IP. In fact, Paymail itself is actually patented, or it's patent pending by Inchain. So we're patenting everything. I'm actually a part of that patent because I sort of co-invented it. So we're patenting everything. I mean, and our MoneyButton is going to start patenting stuff too. I mean, because we've lived in this industry for a while, people have cloned us several times. Enough of that. Stop copying us. We're going to start patenting and copyrighting, trademarking everything, and enough of the clone stuff. Even Bitcoin was cloned. I mean, it was cloned thousands of times and made worse. These people aren't helping. They're making it worse. So everything is going to be patented and exclusive to Bitcoin SV, because this is how we make it work for real for everyone. We create value by making everything exclusive to Bitcoin SV. We are years ahead. For anybody that watched my talk from yesterday, people need to realize we're like years ahead of all these other people. They have created such a problem. What we're going to do is we're going to make it so that they cannot do that again. I mean, we're going to patent the hell out of every invention, and they're not going to be allowed to use it on anything that isn't the real Bitcoin.
Because when you were talking about encryption, it kind of reminds me of one of Craig Wright's patents. I don't know if this is being utilized in that part, but there's a deterministic key generation patent where it's basically determining a common secret for secure exchange of information and hierarchical cryptographic keys or something like that. Is that being utilized in this encryption?
Yes. Yes, it is. I mean, that is used for things like sending the encrypted message to somebody else, as well as all sorts of other things. I mean, that is a very, very general and useful patent.
That's because, I remember that, and I was like, wow. Even Joshua Hensley was talking about ways of, trying to encrypt potentially this EDI project that he's working on, and he was kind of referring to that patent of Nchains. And so it seems like that's going to be something that'll be utilized for a lot of things. And I understand that you want to come up with like a documentation series or something to help developers and people better understand MoneyButton and different things. Is that right?
That's right. So we have a documentation series where what we're doing is we're explaining, we basically realize that given all this drama that's happened over time with the industry, we need to create real information that allows people to just get rid of all that trash. There's so much trash on social media and these crypto publications that they're not really accurately informing people. We need real documentation on stuff, real information about how Bitcoin works. I mean, we started with just documenting MoneyButton, but we realized that in order to really leverage MoneyButton, it's helpful to understand everything else too. So we're explaining Bitcoin, and we're explaining business, we're explaining all these things that people need to know to be able to actually really create a business that helps build this system, that helps build a global Bitcoin. So that's the MoneyButton documentation series, is explaining everything that we know. And if we don't know, then we bring in experts who know this stuff to explain these things to anyone who wants to do this.
I think that's great that you're going to have a documentation series that really helps educate people, because there's so much that's just kind of put out there. Like Craig Wright puts a lot of things out there, Unwriter puts a lot of things out there, and they're like, and then people are like, what is this? What is it? So if people can really explain it to others that don't have a full grasp of it yet, I think that would really help tremendously. And so where could we find this documentation series of yours?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, everything can be found at moneybutton.com. You can find links to everything. So just moneybutton.com. The documentation series specifically is at docs.moneybutton.com, docs.moneybutton.com.
Or could you go to moneybutton.com and then just find a section for docs? Okay. And there was one interesting video that you had that I watched a little while ago, how you were talking about malleability, and how malleability is kind of a feature and not really a bug. And I wanted to have you explain that, because you've dealt a lot with payment channels. You were one of the first to actually create your own payment channel way back when you were kind of looking at BTC a long time ago, and so yeah, I wanted to kind of have you explain why malleability is a feature and not a bug.
Sure. So, I mean, I know of two ways, and I suspect there's more, because the more I learn from Craig, the more I realize that there's a lot more going on here than I ever previously realized. I mean, the two ways are basically that you can actually do things like put data inside of an input, and you can actually have that as a part of a payment channel. So I can do things like make payments to Netflix, and Netflix can stream data back to me. What we're doing is we're actually sending transactions back and forth. Netflix can actually send me data inside of a transaction, and the data can actually be removed before broadcasting it. That's malleability, because it's a valid transaction with data inside of the input. And when you remove the data, the signatures in there are still valid, because the entire input is blanked when you sign stuff. So all this means is you're just able to manipulate the inputs. There's another thing, though, involving signature malleability, which Craig actually sort of revealed yesterday, although he didn't explain it in the sense of malleability, but he explained that there are very clear reasons to actually go in there and manipulate some of these values inside of a signature, R and S and K, when you're creating a signature. And if you do stuff like that, there are actually very good reasons to actually want to be able to change a valid signature into a different valid signature. So that's malleability. And there are reasons to do these things. Like, we want to be able to change the signature in an input. If it's still valid, it's still valid. And, you know, there's no bug here. This is not a bug. This is a feature. I mean, it just is a different transaction, technically, because it hashes differently. But it's a useful thing to be able to edit that signature and still have a valid transaction.
Does that involve the code separator that Dr. Wright was talking about? He was saying yesterday in the presentation, he was talking about op return and how that relates to the code separator, and how with the op return you can actually, with the code separator, something like you can skip to the next skip to the next something or other.
Yeah. So there are two ways I can think to do this. So first of all, what opcode separator is something that no one really understood ever. What it is if you learn about like forth programming and stuff like that, like it's really basically just about, you have a little chunk of code that does something, and opcode separator is a way of like putting different chunks of code together. Very much like running a function. So you can kind of think of it that way, that actually going from one chunk to another is kind of a function. There's actually a different way to run functions, though, which is the idea that you have these output that actually returns a different output number that is a function that you then execute. So that doesn't necessarily use opcode separator. What you do with opcode separator is it has this interesting property that when you sign something with opcode separator in there, it only signs, I believe, back to the most recent opcode separator, or it might be forwards to the next one. I don't quite remember, but it allows you to have part of that script that's actually not a part of the signature, because you don't care. You only care about the part of the script that you care about. And if there's other stuff there, it's not in the signature. So it actually is yet another type of malleability, actually, because you can have this sort of different script, still a valid transaction and valid signature, and yet it's a different transaction because the script is different. So it's yet another different way to do some type of malleability, as well as a different way to have functions inside of script.
So I guess would make it a way to securely pay any address, and at the same time be able to set the public key after the exchange?
So that is the idea, and I'll say that that is what Craig said, and I don't fully understand what Craig said yesterday, but I'll tell you something else. Every time I study anything that Craig says, basically if you actually look into any of it, everything makes sense, and it's way deeper than anyone realizes. I mean, you have to treat him like a professor. Craig is teaching everyone stuff. When you go to university, you don't just go to the lectures and then take the test. You didn't study anything. You're going to fail. You have to actually study if you want to get an A. So you have to listen to what he's saying, take notes, and study what he's saying. And that's what I'm going to do. So I don't fully understand what he said yesterday. I explained what I knew just now, but I'm going to go study this stuff. And so ask me again in a week, and I'm going to go look it all up and figure out what he was talking about and watch it again and all that type of thing. And I'll be able to give you a better answer because I realize the incredible value of the knowledge that Craig is just putting out there right now. So I'm studying him. I am learning from Professor Craig, and I'm going to get an A on the test.
And we really appreciate you, Ryan, because, it's like we listen to Dr. Wright, he explains it, and then we're like, what is he saying? And so what I do is I wait for Ryan Charles to read it and study it, and then he puts out his video on, on either MoneyButton or the Ryan Charles that I subscribe both to, and then you explain it in layman's terms for people like me to understand. And so I'm glad that you do that, and I think it's great that you're doing this documentation series so that people can understand. And you're the best person at explaining all this stuff, and I really appreciate it, because you know it pretty well.
well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the compliment. It's useful to hear that type of thing. So I'm going to keep doing it because I love that feedback. I love the fact that, that's useful to people. And I'm getting better as I go, too. I'm learning to become better and explain things better and so on. So long as this keeps being helpful to people, I'll keep doing it. I will definitely keep making videos.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to add about what's going on or what your thoughts about Bitcoin SV, anything else?
Yes. So for anybody listening, they need to realize how much trouble we've been through to get to this point, and we finally have like a clear runway. We finally can just do all the stuff we've been talking about this entire time. There's no one stopping us anymore. We no longer have Luke Jr. telling us we're spamming the blockchain and all that ridiculous drama. None of that stuff is happening anymore. We can finally do everything we've been saying. So the time is now, is what the lesson is. What are those ideas that you want to get out there and do? Don't waste a minute, because you can start doing it right away. There's nothing stopping you. And you can build a little business and you can grow it rapidly right now. And we're all going to help lift each other up. Because as we roll out this ecosystem, we build businesses that work with each other. We build software that can be plugged into other software like MoneyButton, and we build these protocols that everyone can use. We're working together. We're not friends, we're competitors, but we're competitors not in the sense of like a sports game where one wins and one loses, but more like in the sense of, business, where I can win and you can win, and the competition is I want to win more. And the reason I'm going to win more than some person is because I produce more, not because I defeated them or killed them, but because I just worked harder or something like that. So that's the way to win the competition in Bitcoin. Just work even harder, be even more innovative, and you just become even richer. So it's not about destroying people. We all work together because we're creating businesses that use each other's services. So it's competition in a business sense, not in a sports game sense.
And Bitcoin SV, it is the best, I think, it's very business friendly. It's going to have massive scale, which is what we need to be able to do all these types of projects and things on Bitcoin. And, with a stable protocol that you don't have to worry about, changing and updating all the time. So I think this is great, and I appreciate you taking the time to speaking with me today, and I really hope you enjoy the rest of your time here in Toronto for the conference.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, and nice to talk with you, and cool to see you after a year and do another video. I hope we talk again in another year and can see all the stuff that's going to happen. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited to see you next year, hopefully so. Okay, well, thank you so much, Ryan. You have a good rest of your day.
All right.
Okay.